Thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to come before you, to celebrate this day and to honor you on this last day of the feast of Sukkot. Father, we ask that you be with us, you reveal to us your truth, you speak to our hearts and help us to prepare for your coming. Ask you all in the mighty name of Yeshua Mashiach. Amen. All right, so today is sort of a short teaching, but it's a complex one. What I decided what I'm going to do this year with the Torah portions, I'm going to do the Aleph Bet as well. So when we do the first Torah portion, we'll do the Aleph as well. And the second one, we'll do the Bet. So we can go through both at the same time. So what we're going to do in this one, I'm going to lay the foundation for the purpose of the Aleph Bet so you can understand why it's also a cycle. Just like a Torah cycle, you get an Aleph Bet cycle. And the other thing that I'm going to touch on, I make this letter Samech gold and large, because we're going to look at the letter Samech specifically in this study, because it's very significant. So we're going to sort of jump ahead in time with the Aleph Bet studies, just to look at the Samech. But just a few concepts about it. There's much more when we get to that. All right, so Sukkot, we already looked at that last week. Then we get Shimini, Atzeret. That actually is, when you translate it directly, it means the 8th assembly. It doesn't have the word Yom or day in there. So if you just think about the 8th assembly, or the assembly on the 8th, and that gives you a bit of a broader understanding of this day. And then, of course, Shimchat Torah means the turning back of the Torah, which is also one of the main things that we are going to look at today. All right. So we are currently on the 30th, based on our moon cycle. I'm not going to go into detail into that. In our feast cycle, just to recap, we discussed last week that Sukkot is basically 1,000-year Sukkot prophetically, or the theme of Sukkot. And the 8th day is basically the starting of the 8th millennium. So that's just zooming out completely what the prophetic significance is. If we zoom in, we had events that happened on the 7th, during the 7th millennium and the Sukkot. And the thing that really sparked the thought there was the city of forests. That was one of the ideas that came out with the Gematria, that has to do with a world that's completely destroyed, people starting over. And we also had some hints there that people might live 1,000 years, just like they live 1,000 years in the beginning up to the flood. Now we have, after a event, 1,000 years. So we look at the Menorah Pattern. This is now completing the Menorah Pattern, where you link the first millennium with the last millennium, where people live for 1,000 years. And it fits the pattern. Whether it will be so, there will be people who will find out, and they will tell us about it when the smoke clears after the final war. We also discussed the concept of the wine press, the pressing of the grapes, the wine for the 4th cup, the cup that's going to be celebrated in the 8th millennium, and specifically around a festival. Now we're going to also look at a feast that I discovered through using the Gematria, but I switched a number into binary, and then I translate that into decimal, and then I took the Gematria of the binary, and that confirmed what's going to happen in the 8th millennium, which is very interesting. It's just something that caught my eye, and because I know binary, I thought, let me try that, and it confirmed the same thing. Fascinating to see how even numbers within different arrangements still confirm the same thing. This is a slide from last year, just to sum things up, with the pinnacle in the middle, which is 1,000-year Sabbath, and on either side of that you have a war. On either side you have the Messiah coming on either side of the 7th millennium, and you also have a woman on either side. On the left we have the whore of Babylon. On the right, we have the bride of Messiah. And then we have a city that's been destroyed, or a kingdom, and then a city and a kingdom that's been established. So with this, I would like to emphasize the idea and the concept of the importance of the Menorah pattern. Now, I'm going to use the Menorah pattern a lot in the alphabet. I'm chopping off some branches because we only look at 3 letters. We put one in the middle and one on each side, and we analyze it within the Menorah pattern in the same way we do with a 7-branch one. You can have a 5-branch, 9 branch, doesn't matter. It's the concept that holds true. I'm not going to go into detail. We've discussed this a lot. The thing I want to emphasize here is what you see there, here in the middle is destruction. And that is abomination of desolation. Desolation looks like that. That's after something, a major event happened. And when you think about the Great Tribulation with the cycles of 7 plagues, having 3 of them hitting the earth, what will the earth look like? And there's a lot of spectacular things that will happen in the same intensity as Mount Sinai, Yahweh speaking, rock splitting, earthquakes. You get the same flavor of that at the end as well. Yahweh will speak again. It's called the 7 thunders. And there will be a lot of things happening there as well.
Did you hear the thunderclap last night?
Hey?
Did you hear the thunderclap last night?
Yeah. You think, oh my goodness, it's Yahweh speaking.
What was that?
The loud was a loud roll and a clap and then a loud roll out.
Sounded big. Yeah, there was a little bit of that this morning as well, not as loud.
Oh, no, I don't know that. This is the same principle, but just on the Menorah pattern, where we emphasize the number 6, 7, 8, which is 6 millennium, 7 millennium, and 8 millennium. That's also the concept of translating something in the physical, which is number 6, through the process of number 7 to get to number 8. When you put it on its side, it's the infinity side. So that is the realm above time. That's where the concept of eternity or eternal life comes from. It's life outside of time that lasts forever. And then we have the same symmetry of the second coming, the third coming of Messiah, the 2 wars, 2 cities, and the 2 women. Now, what I want to emphasize with this one, this is a slide that comes from last year. What I sort of resonated with this year is the day of preparation. Now, if you think about a 7-day feast, Sukkot is a 7-day feast, and unleavened bread is a 7-day feast. There's a day of preparation on the 14th of Nisan, which is called Passover, which is effectively the 8th day. That's not part of the 7-day feast, but in the package, it's 8 days. In the same way, we get Sukkot with a feast at the end. That's not really part of it, but it's separate. And when you look at the symmetry on the menorah, both of them sit on the outside. The one start with preparation, have 7 days, and the other one have 7 days, and then end with the 8th day. So that gives me the pattern to say that today, which is the 8th day, is a day of preparation. Similar to what Nisan 14 was a day of preparation. Preparing for what? That is the question.
Next cycle.
Hey?
The next cycle.
The next cycle. But I've got a picture of a butterfly there. So if you take these 2 festivals and put them on top of each other, you fold them on top of each other, and you put it on its left side, and you approach it from the left, you have Passover unleavened bread, and the 8th day, and then you have unleavened bread festival, and then you have Sukkot. It's just approaching it from the same point of view. And within a cycle, once we finish the 7 days of Sukkot, you get to an 8th day that prepare you for the Passover that's coming. So that day of preparation is the wedding feast that will come. And then the theme of that Passover is the wedding. And we have celebrated Passover in that context. And the theme of that Passover I did was called the Threshold Covenant. That's where the bride is taken in the arms of Messiah, and he's carrying her over the Kidron Valley, which is where the water and the blood of the sacrifices normally ran. And that blood and water is same as the blood of the lamb that flow in the threshold of the door where the groom will step over the threshold carrying the bride into the house. The groom will carry the bride in his arms over the Kidron Valley, stepping into or onto the Temple Mount, which symbolically is the house of Yahweh. And that is after the Gog and Magog war, and that is before the New Jerusalem comes down. Now, last week we touched on the idea of we cannot have a wedding unless there's preparation for the place where the wedding need to be set up. Now, I believe the New Jerusalem will set the setting for the wedding, and then the 5 foolish virgins will be the ones knocking at the doors of the city where the wedding is hosted. And they can't come in because they are on the outside. They haven't been refined and they cannot enter, even though they've partaken in the covenant and all that, but they rejected some aspect of Yahweh's refinement process, and that pushed them back into the next cycle, which is still in the physical. And those who have been carried in the arms of Messiah, they are in the same cycle but in an elevated state, which is a new cycle in a higher dimension, where the others have the same cycle in a lower dimension. It's the same as we live now in the living, and parallel to this, there are people who are dead. They exist in the same very point in time, but they are in a lower state than us. In the same way, those people will exist in a lower state, and we will exist in a higher state, those who accepted Messiah and Torah. So that's the idea of that. So this preparation, the 8th day, which is the 22nd of Tishri. So I've got number 22 there, which is very significant as well. Number 2 means the restoration of relationships. And number 2 is Bet, and 20 is, what's the Aleph Bet letter that's 20? I think it's the Kaf. Well, I can't say. I didn't check it up, so I don't want to say anything now. I know 222 is 3 letters. 200, I think it's Resh. 20 is, I think it's Kaf, and 2 is Bet. And they each have a significance. And when you look at the gematria of 222, it's about the birthright. So the number 22 also links to what object in the temple. There's an object that links to number 22 in the holy place. Yeah, there's 22 almond blossoms on the menorah. So the menorah is the light. The light is the foundation of who Yahweh is. He is a consuming fire. That light is what lights up the holy place. In the city, there will be no need for the sun anymore, because Yahweh and the Lamb will be the light, giving the light from the city. The same idea. So the menorah will exist, or the idea of the menorah, the symbolism, will exist, but this time in the real. So we had a pattern in the physical, there will be the real in the spiritual, which is the 7 spirits, or the attributes of the Spirit of Yahweh, and the fullness of His presence, which is His holiness, as you read in Isaiah 11 verse 2. I'm not going to read the rest. All I can see here that I want to underline is that the 8th day is a Sabbath. It's called a Sabbathon, is the Hebrew word, where you need to complete your rest on the 8th day. So with that saying, is when we exist in the physical, when do we rest? What is the scenery around us when we rest normally?
You mean like now?
In the physical. When you go to rest in darkness. So what will change is, on the 8th day, we will go to rest in light. There won't be any more darkness. So that's the difference. We find comfort in darkness. We rest in darkness. Isn't that a scary thought? And we're happy doing that. Interesting idea. But imagine if you can rest in light, where you can interact with Yahweh and never get tired. I think that's the concept of entering into His rest. It's like being in a state of rest, being at peace all the time and not getting tired, having that.
Yeah, you don't need that. You don't need to go and sleep to recover.
Yeah, there's no need for night, and there's no need for darkness for you to recover, because you will be in a recovered state all the time.
Because he never slumbers or sleeps.
Yeah, because he's in the 8th day. He rests in light. When Yahweh rested on the 7th day, he didn't go to bed. He admired his creation and he ruled over it. So before we step into the 8th day, stepping back into the last day, which was, according to our physical time frame, was the 7th day of Sukkot, or the 21st of Tishri. And that day is called Hosanna Rabbah, which is called the Great Salvation. Now, that is where Yeshua quoted or recorded by John in John 7:37-38, where Yeshua said, "Now on the last day, the great day of the feast, Yeshua was standing there, and he cried out, saying, 'If any man thirst, let him come to me and drink, and that he believes in me, as the scripture said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water.' Now he said this concerning the Spirit, to whom the ones having believed in him were going to receive." Now, in the context of this, let's overlay that with the 7th millennium. It's a desert experience. It's called the second wilderness experience, or the second desert experience. Do you think they will value water more than us, living where there's plenty of water? So imagine their intensity of thirst. And then Yeshua will say, "Come to me, I will give you water." They will come running. And that's the intensity or the emotion behind this great salvation. Because from their point of view, their salvation is to quench their thirst. But then he's saying, no, there's a spiritual idea or a spiritual essence that I'm going to give to you, which is my spirit that will quench your spiritual thirst. So those who are hungry and thirsty for Yahweh's things will find all the answers to their questions. And these are people who are now existing in the 7th millennium. They will have a lot of questions. Those of us who's been translated into the 8th millennium, they will already receive their answers. It's not for them. And now they can be elevated by his spirit, and that gives us the confidence to say that they will now be renewed as well and enter into the wedding, because they've been elevated, because they received the Spirit. It's a sign of being accepted by the Messiah, because you accept the Messiah and you accept his word and his truth. Now you receive his Spirit, and that quenching of your thirst, spiritual thirst, is now being satisfied, and that will translate you into the higher dimension as well. And I think the parable of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins play off during the 7th millennium, because that's where the people will exist, and there will be a separation from those who go and assemble themselves around Jerusalem area, rebuilding the city and the temple, and those who will go out in a wider area, and they will come and do battle against those people inside at the battle of Gog and Magog, and they will be the foolish ones. All right, so that's the 7th day. And the 7th day basically now step into the 8th day. So you can only step into the 8th day in a renewed body if you accept it and receive the great salvation. And that's what this passage is about, is to step, just like we step over the Jordan, we're going to step over the border of the 7th into the 8th millennium. And there's a salvation process that will happen. So when will the Jews be saved who didn't accept Messiah? Then. Because they will have that experience. They will accept Messiah or not. That will distinguish whether they're wise or foolish. And if they're wise, then they will be part of the bride stepping into the 8th millennium, celebrating the feast and receiving his Spirit. The 8th day, the new cycle, turning back of the Torah, Shimini, Atzeret, the 8th assembly, which is another term for eternal life, or Chai Olam. And the reason I'm saying that is just the fact that salvation equals entering the 8th millennium in a renewed, elevated state and being part of the bride. That is what salvation, or the true definition of salvation is. You can say, yes, I was born again, or yes, I was saved in 1971, or whatever. But that's the starting point of your salvation. Salvation is just like Shavuot. It's a process. It's not something that happens and now once saved, always saved. No, you start to run the race. Now you need to run. Because the finishing line is over there. And once you cross the finishing line, then you are a winner, where you can cry, Hosanna Rabbah, the great salvation. I have won.
You're not saved until you hear, well done, good and faithful servant.
That's it. And you only hear that after you cross the finishing line. That's what the language that Paul used. You run a race, not against your brothers and sisters, against your own flesh. You need to outrun the black dog in your life and overcome the flesh. The Shimini Atzeret, or the 8th day, some people believe it's part of Sukkot, other people say it's a separate festival. I'm of the opinion it is a separate festival because of the prophetic significance thereof. And on this day, they turn back the Torah Scroll. It roughly takes 45 minutes. So it's close to an hour to turn back the scroll. So it's a fair amount of work. And once they do that, before they start, they read the last part of Deuteronomy, which is in the eyes of all of Israel. And then they start the first verse. In the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. Of Bereshit. What did I say?
You just said the first verse.
Of Bereshit. So if you read that in one breath, in the eyes of all Israel, in the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. So Yisrael was present when Yahweh created this cycle. And we're going to delve a bit into that again. And we're also going to revisit that on Saturday, just to give some more substance, because I found some more gems along the line.
To come again on Saturday.
And the thing I want to emphasize here is that in Hebrew, time is cyclical. It's not linear. And one cycle, when that's finished, the new cycle begins. And you can overlay one cycle with another. So I believe that's where the idea of parallel universes come from. It's parallel time cycles. And from Yahweh's point of view, everything happens at the same time, all the time, always. In front of him, every single time cycle. Because he's above it. He's not submitted beneath it. And that's why we can be in the same location where he is looking from the top down upon time and see everything playing out before us, just like you can see eternity in a moment. The other thing about this day is when they turn back the Torah Scroll, is when you read through the Torah Scroll, read from right to left, you start off with a skinny bit on the right side when the cycle starts, and that means that the left side, the skinny side is on the right. The left side is larger when you start Bereshit, and as you read, the heavier part moves to the right. So that means you, at the end of the Torah cycle, you now became full and large in stature regarding spirituality. But then the new cycle starts, because that was only a foundation for the next level. You graduated. Congratulations. You're going to finish primary school. Next year's secondary school. Oh, no, I'm nothing again. So that's what the Torah cycle is about as well. You haven't arrived. You're not there yet. You're still in this phase, this life. And whatever you learned up to this point is a stepping stone. We're going to learn so much more. So imagine where we're going to go, this new cycle, when we look back what we've learned in the previous one. And that's exciting, isn't it? Because Yahweh builds upon one foundation upon another, precept upon precept, putting the layers on. And our minds can only comprehend this little much a single time. Sometimes we just hear the same thing again and then a penny drops. Or now I remember it. Oh yes, I can recall that. So because of our imperfections, the cycles need to exist in order to perfect us and bring us into the fullness of perfection.
We had a discussion earlier this week, maybe last night or the night before, just talking about the Hebrew language and how much we learn from the Hebrew language, because it's impossible to learn these things in English or Afrikaans, whatever language. And I said to Philip, no wonder they're trying to wipe out Easter language, because we now discover the truth and the history of mankind, you know, because we were living a lie, believed the lie, because we didn't know the language. Yeah, so and it's fascinating how it's coming back, and so many people are waking up to this.
It's restoration is really a miracle.
Yeah. It's amazing to turn back time, isn't it? As you go to the next thing, you actually go deeper. You go further back to the original foundation. Then you understand from that larger perspective. That give you the full context and take away all confusion. And that's what it's about. If you step back, you're actually stepping up. When you move forward, you're basically stepping up and growing. It's a win-win. So you guys haven't been in this study last year. So you've seen this pretty picture for the first time. It's a letter Chet.
Started the week after.
Oh, you did with Bereshit. You start with Genesis 1 verse 1.
I can't remember.
Yes, because we saw you at Rebecca's
It was
on the
Sukkot.
last day of
The
Sukkot.
last, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the next
So
year.
you
So
started
it
the
was the
cycle.
next week. Yeah.
So congratulations, you made 1 year.
With all the crazies.
Yeah.
You qualified
You
and
finished elementary school.
you passed grade 1. Cycle 1.
That's a year.
Or might be a couple of cycles for you already. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So number 8, in relation to the temple. So the last day of the feast is called the 8th day. Number 8 has got a lot of spiritual significance, because number 8 is the 8th letter of the Aleph Bet, which is the letter Chet. And that's also the letter where you enter through the doorpost that is painted with blood. That's a sign of the blood on the doorpost. Now, as I said, the 8th day is the starting point of preparation for the Passover that's coming. And this is painting, so to speak, the blood on the doorpost on the 8th day. That's your preparation. What you need to do, bring a lamb into your house, slaughter the lamb, paint it on the doorpost, and then your salvation will come. Then you can enter after you exit. So that's letter Chet, and letter Chet is part of the word Chai, that means life. So they associate letter Chet also with life itself. Now in the Gematria of number 8, we get a few words that underline this concept. We get the word Ahav, that means to love. And that's a combination of the Father, which is Aleph Bet. On the left or right you get the Aleph, on the far left you get the Bet, and in the middle you get the letter Hey. And Ahav means love, but the letter Hey is also the sound of breath, which is the Ruach. So the combination of the Father and His Spirit, that's what love is. Love is a person, it's not a thing. It's a combination of Yahweh's personality expressed through the concept of the Father and His Spirit, or the Helper. It's also the word Abba, that means to be willing or to give consent. It's also Aveh, that means entreat, longing and desire. And it's also the word Be'ah, that means entrance or coming in, like in entering the temple. Now with that thought in mind, when you look at the letter Chet, because it's a doorway, there are 2 other letters that are also doorways, and they can be associated with the 3 doorways entering into the tabernacle. Now the first one, the reason I picked the hay, someone asked me on a comment on the video, why is the hay on the outside and not the tuff on the outside and hay on the inside? Because the hay is light, it's associated with the light of the menorah. And the tuff is on the outside, it's tough out there. But the principle of the letter hay means light and truth. And on the outside of that doorway is darkness. So what will attract people into the light? The light itself. So that doorway radiates light and attracts people into the light. And that is the message of the basic truth of Mashiach, which is the gospel message. It attracts you, and then the next thing you encounter is the brazen altar. That's where you have to accept his sacrifice. The next thing you encounter is the laver. That's where you have to accept his Torah. And after you've done that, you've passed through the mountain experience, and now you can be initiated as the kingdom of priests. That's what we learned in the previous cycle. And the priesthood can now enter into the holy place. No one else can, not normal people, just plain people. You need to be part of the priest in order to enter the taf. Now the taf is where you put the yoke on. You would have an ox, and the Mashiach is the other one. And together you plow and prepare the ground and do the work in the kingdom for the benefit of the harvest that is to come. It's not the people on the outside who's going to work. It's not like the priests sit there on their chairs like the Egyptian slave masters cracking the whip and the others need to work. No, it's the actual priesthood who are the slaves or the servants serving the people. That's a servant's heart, because Mashiach is our servant. He's our suffering servant. That's the idea of being a leader from Yahweh's perspective. You serve. You don't sit there and dictate and tell people what to do. So the letter Taf is tough because you serve, and you serve in the house for the benefit of the people on the outside. And because you serve, you are the closest to Yahweh's presence, because you are yoked with him. You enter into his presence, where his spirit and his word is, and where the presence is. And just on the other side of the curtain is the glory, which is the last gate, which is the letter Chet, which is that last gateway where you enter, which is the entering into the city, so to speak, where you enter after Hosanna Rabbah, and you get your glorified body. Then you can stand in the presence of the furnace, where there's heat. It's not made for physical bodies. You need to be translated into a renewed body to enter into that last chamber. And that's where you need to have that translated experience in order to still have chai in the presence of Yahweh's consuming fire. So that's a beautiful picture of the tabernacle, the doorways, and the symbolism of these letters. And that's where the little gems drop in from the meanings of those letters and how they connect through the numbers and how the letter Chet connects to this day. So in the time perspective, we are now stepping from the 7th millennium into the 8th millennium through the doorway of the Chet, which is the last one. You have to be translated to step into the 8th millennium in order to stand before Yahweh in his presence. And that is true for the prophetic as well. So it fits perfectly. 8th day is all about stepping into the glorious presence of Yahweh without being consumed, because you've been elevated and you are now the bride. Interestingly, if you combine the three letters, which are the three doorways, the Chet, Taf, and Hey at the bottom there, makes the word Chata. That means to take hold of fire. Isn't that an interesting meaning? So when you take hold of fire now, you'll get third-degree burn wounds because you're in a fleshly form. So that implies you need to be like Daniel and his friends. You need to be elevated in order to exist in that tremendous presence of Yahweh. And there's also take away and snatch up. That's the symbolism of Kidron Valley, the bride, and being carried into the covenant marriage experience, which will happen in the 8th millennium, and that's entering through that Chet doorway. Yes.
Oh no, it's just that when you were talking about the end of this cycle and then connecting to Pesach, just made me think of the Het, the doorway from Pesach that you come out of with the blood, because you had it over this way. They come out of that door and then go through the Het again at the end of the cycle. So,
as you step into glory, it's your next Passover, which is the beginning of the next one. Cycles of 7, cycles of elevation and refinement, taking you to the next level until you graduate. After how many cycles, don't know, can't say. But it's not going to stop because of the nature of Yahweh and the nature of time. It's an eternal process. And if you think for yourself, if I'm going to exist forever and I step into eternity and I now know everything that I need to know, you will be so bored. And imagine being bored for eternity. They did an experiment on people. They say if you are bored, it's like a painful experience. They had a room with a button. When you press the button will shock you. And they tell people what it will do. And then they put them in the room and time them for how long it will take them to press the button. Some people don't even last 30 seconds because they say the pain is more stimulating than being bored. It's more painful being bored than being shocked. Boredom is painful and we will not be bored, so that means we will go through processes and experiences. Yeah. All right. Now we're going to step into the Bereshit space. I've got a picture there of a fireball between two hands, and that's a symbol of the letter Aleph. Now, Yad means hand. We got two hands, and we got a Vav in the middle. And that is the creation from the essence of let there be light, whatever existed when he said that, to shape and form that into something. So when you bake a cake, you've got ingredients. When you read Genesis 1 verse 1 to 1 verse 3, what are the ingredients that Yahweh used to create everything? Can someone?
Spoke.
Yeah, he spoke. But let's say speaking is energy. Let's not add that one. And what else was there? There was light. It's only until
Water.
there was water, yes.
Water of the deep, yeah.
And what else?
Fire, Yahweh's Spirit.
There was his spirit, yes. What else?
The name.
There was the
There's
earth.
the heavens, the earth, and the deep.
There was the earth covered by the waters of the deep. Yahweh's spirit moved over the waters and he spoke, let there be light. And then the first day of creation started. So he first got all the ingredients, put it on the table, and then he started day one. And then he started separating. And then he separated again. So in order to separate, there need to be something first before he can be separated. So he separated the waters from the waters, separated the waters from the land. So the land existed in the beginning that we call Bereshit. That is a time period or a state before creation.
The setting for the first day.
So Bereshit is like a preparation process. If you're a painter, you get all your paint together, get the canvas up and all that. And all of that preparation you do is called Bereshit. In the beginning, before he spoke, Bereshit was set up. And then he starts speaking through Aleph Tav. In the beginning, Yahweh, Elohim, Bereshit bara, in the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. So in the beginning, there was Elohim. So we had the Bereshit, we had Elohim, and we had bara, that's created. The created is the essence of what he wants to do as molding or separating or whatever. The technique he wants to use. Elohim was there, who were the hands. Bereshit was the preparation process, including the ingredients. And then Aleph Tav. It's the Aleph Bet, because it's the first and last letter of the Aleph Bet. And that's where he spoke. And then the heavens and the earth came into being by all the ingredients that's in Bereshit, by the hands of Elohim, through the means or the techniques or the talent of bara and the medium of words. So not everything was created out of nothing through words, because we had the earth, we had water, we had darkness. Darkness is something, it's not nothing. It's like something that's cold is the absence of heat. But in order to have something that's cold, there need to be something that can be cold. So in the same way, darkness is not something in itself. It's something that is dark. So we're going to look at that as well, if you look at it technically. So that's that picture there on the top right that Yahweh used as his creative process. The other thing we can see here is that Yahweh created a space. Now this comes from our Jewish brothers and all their philosophizing over thousands and thousands of years. They said that because Yahweh is light, Yahweh exists, in order to create something that's lower, he had to create a space within himself, darkness, and then he spoke into the darkness, which is like a little light beam, and with that light, everything exists within him, and he's on the outside, above everything, and everything is in him. That's the idea. So this little space, we're going to look at what's creating this space. Now, when you look at the construction or the symbolism of the letters, we've got the letter Vav and the two Yods. Now, if we think about to create a space, you need some sort of a canvas. We all know what a tent is. Now, in order to get a tent up, you need a middle post. And then you put tension on the canvas through opposing forces. You have to peg them in to give it stability. And then it creates a space that can house the presence of Yahweh, or can house the space in which he will create whatever he's creating. In saying that, all the ingredients to make a tent is found within the Aleph. And we know that the Aleph is also Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So Yahweh used himself, or everything that comes from him, to create a space from with what he created everything within that space. And that comes from him. And that's a little picture there with the tent, with the Vav and the two Yods, holding up the space in the context of the letter Bet, which means house. And the reason I use the tent or the Bet, because we are in Sukkot, so we got tent on the brain. We start with the Torah portion, Bereshit. There's a massive Bet in the Torah portion. And everything flows from that Bet. So that means all the letters of the Aleph Bet
comes from
for the whole of Torah flowed from the letter Bet, which is the house. So the house was the space that created the area from where Yahweh stood and spoke everything into existence. So the Bet existed prior to him speaking. And what is beyond the Bet? On the far right is the Aleph, because now we saw that when you break up the Aleph into a Vav and two Yods, it creates the space, which is basically the Bet. And the Aleph is hidden. So we look at the tent, which is creation. Where's Yahweh? He's on the outside. He's upholding everything for this to exist. And all of this is in him, and we are in him. And that's technically correct when you look at what we just looked at. Putting all these things together.
Doesn't make sense.
I know it's very abstract concepts, but Yahweh is very abstract. And symbolism, he doesn't hold back. Everything connects to everything. And everything's got meaning, and give it a little nuance, or coloring in a little thing, or fill a little hole to get everything intact.
So what the opposing forces, what?
I'm glad you asked that, because you asked that last week. What about Satan? Is he going to be saved? You know, he's chucked in the lake of fire, and we compared the lake of fire to a harbor at the ocean, which has got darkness and deepness. And on the shore, there's fire, which is the presence of Yahweh. So imagine the city, a shore, and then the nations outside, which simulate the ocean or the sea with the waters of the deep, with entrapped souls that are still entrapped within their cultures and whatever. It's full of darkness. And he wants to fish them out and bring them into the light. But he's a fire. So now you have a harbor, you've got fire and the waters of the deep. You get waters of the deep, You've got the Shin, which is fire. You've got people entrapped within there, which is the ingredients of the previous cycle, judgment. So that's just connecting where we stepped off last week. Judgment, like of fire, is the separation, which is the first step of creation. What is Yahweh doing? He's separating the wise from the foolish. You had Mount Ebal, Mount Gerizim. You had the sheep and the goats. What is he going to do with them? The essence of their medium, you cannot destroy. You can't destroy a soul. It's like gold. You can heat it up as much as you can. It will just melt. And Yahweh's nature is fire. Our nature is gold, full of impurities. His presence can't destroy you. And fire, which fuels the lake of fire, comes from his presence. It's not something outside of him that's evil. It's his character, it's his holiness. And if he's holy and there's darkness in you, he will consume the darkness, and that smoke will come up before him. And that's the smoke that you read about. So it's all spiritual concepts. But it's all part of Yahweh, because he used himself, created everything, and when everything goes back, he will go back into himself. It's not something that exists outside of him. So Lucifer is in Yahweh as well. And the Nachash was in him in a certain form. And the Nachash came into being as a result of one thing that happened. The creation itself. When you think about separation, let's separate energy. North, south, hot, cold.
To create something automatically creates its opposite.
I call it the world of duality. Creating the world of duality create opposing forces. Opposer in Hebrew is Hasatan, the opposer. Opposing forces came into being because of the world of duality. The Nachash came into being as a result of the creation of the world of duality by the two hands pulling the canvas over the Vav, creating the space. The Nachash was there as an energy because of the opposing forces to create the space where we can live in. And there's more to that. He wanted us to love him. We need free will. In order to have choice, you need to have two things to choose from. So you need the opposites in order to truly love. Are you going to choose that or that? Otherwise, you're a pre-programmed, brainwashed robot. You have no choice, no freedom of speech, no nothing.
I think it's because we've been indoctrinated by the church and the Catholic Church what Satan actually means. In our minds, it's the one with the horns and the tail and the fork. But it's an opposing force. Nachash is evil inclination in ourselves.
Yeah,
It's a choice that
your forces in you is the light and darkness inside of you. Your flesh and your spirit, man. That's opposing forces. And if you move towards the flesh, you feed the wrong dog and you manifest the Nachash through you. He doesn't have power in itself. He uses your power against you.
That's what Paul's talking about.
And Aleister Crowley, the father of Satanism, he said the worship of the self, that is Satanism. It's not the one with the two horns and that's not it. It's worshipping of the self. That is Satanism.
So the opposing forces create
The opposer.
opportunity for
you
us to make the choice.
Yeah, and whether you go towards the darkness or towards the light, it's your free will. And he created us like him. He's got free will. If he just created you to be in light, you don't have free will. You can't love him. You just obey.
And you just love yourself.
It's a very weird concept. But within the spiritual, there's also similar entities, and that's where the evil entity idea comes from, because they're also in a world of duality. We're in a lower state or realm in a world of duality as well. And those opposing forces there want the lower entity to follow those opposing forces. And that's where the battles happen. That's why when Daniel prayed, took a while because he had to go and fight against the Prince of Persia, which is opposing forces in the spiritual, in order to manifest in the physical and overcome the physical. So we don't understand that world because we can't see it, but we have a shadow of that in here, so it's true in there as well. So when you chuck all of that in the lake of fire, it means that everything that's not part of him will go back. And as I said, the world of duality's got the nature of the opposer. The physical realm, or the leprous state, that will always be there, will always entrap the lepers as well as the Nachash, because he can only exist there. He cannot be saved. If you flip him around, it's called Mashiach. He can never be Mashiach. He's the shadow of, or the total opposite of Mashiach. And he will always be a shadow that reflects in the lower realm. He cannot exist in the higher realm, ever. But he will always be present amongst those who are still entrapped in a state of leprosy, that are in the process of being refined. I hope that clarifies, not confused. Okay, let's make our tent a flat pack IKEA version. So to have the right tent, we need to get a nice big pole in the middle so we can stand. If you stand, it's called uprightness. Last week we looked at the crooked backs. So what happens with them? What's wrong with their tent? They don't have a nice tall center pole. They've got a small vav, because you also get a large vav. A large vav is called vav sufit. It looks like a letter nun, sufit. It's got a long tail, or long body, and that's also called the crowned vav, or the anointed vav. We can also call that the anointed one, which is Mashiach, or the anointed ones, those who follow Mashiach. So the righteous people can stand upright in the house of Yahweh, who's got Mashiach in their midst. When you take Mashiach out, you have to put a man in its place, and immediately you have a small vav, and you replace the two hands, which is his spirit, with vavs as well, because they need to pull this thing, give it some tension so it can stand up. And now we have three vavs. What does that mean?
666 man.
It's where this man comes in. So it's man building their own temples with man-made traditions. And they've got 666 in their midst because it's their idea. It doesn't come from Yahweh's spirit or Mashiach, which is the right temple or the right tabernacle. So that's a beautiful picture, just modifying the Aleph. And if you modify the Aleph, which is the Vav Sufit and the two Yods, and you replace it with two Vavs and another Vav, where's your Aleph now? You don't have an Aleph. Yahweh's not in your midst. It's only man.
Yes.
So don't replace Yahweh with man. Don't worship man. Don't fear man. Fear Yahweh.
For yourself, eh?
Yeah, don't put yourself as the middle branch, or the middle post. Beautiful picture for setting the stage for Bereshit. So we looked at the three gateways. I'm just recapping this slide on a previous study, because we did mention we need to be translated to enter into the 8th millennium. So that's what you will look like. You're going to look like beryl, beryllium, which you are no longer of a lower state, you are of a higher state, and you don't have blood through your veins, you have light through your veins, if you can use that analogy. Don't know what it would look like, but it's a renewed body that can translate from a spiritual into the physical and back. You can move through time, you can move through space, just like Philip and Yeshua. That's the essence of that renewed body. And in order to get that body, you need to get from the carbon base 666. And the only way to get to a higher level, which is Aleph, 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 is to add Dalet, 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 which is 444. And when you add that, you get 1110, and that's my binary number that I got. So 3 Alephs is also the binary of 1110, which equates to number 14 in decimal, and the gematria of number 14 means bramble, thorn, to despise, narrow, steep, gorge. Now think about Revelation 22. You've got the city, and on the outside, what's in between? There's a narrow, steep gorge. What do you read in Luke with Lazarus and the rich man? There's a deep gorge. Just like we see here. On the one side are the righteous. On the other side are those who are still leprous in a lower state.
Well, can you just explain quickly what a binary number is?
It's computer language. So every number here, what did I do now?
Or is that the 1, 2?
So that first digit means 1. The second digit is a 2. The next one is a 4, and the last one is a 8. So because that one is 0, so there's no 1. There's one number 2, so that's 2. There's one number 4, so that's 6. There's one number 8, and that's 14. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 64. That's how they count. So its base value, or base number is...
I believe you.
Right?
We believe you.
But just believe me. Yeah, you get a number of the base of 10. That's what we know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you get 11, which you add 1.
Yeah.
Now this one is I think it's base 16. I think. Can't remember. You also get a base 8 and a base 2 or whatever. You get different base numbers where you count differently. Tesla had base 9. Only count up to 9 and then it repeats. Quite interesting, I looked at that. Fascinating, there's 9 planets. Tesla had a circle, we had 9, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. And then you connect through a triangle 3, 6, 9. And when you start again, you have 10 where there's a 1, 11 where there's a 2. No, I'm just explaining this whole thing.
I might have to see that written down.
And as you go through the cycles, where 9 is, you get the attributes of planet Jupiter, which is the king of king planets. And he said number 9 is a number that does not exist in this realm. It's shared between the spiritual and the physical. That's what he said.
No, he actually said if you can understand 369, you have the key of the universe. That's what they said.
Factor what?
You have the key of the universe. You understand.
369.
So my assumption is, if Jupiter is in 9, there are 9 planets, then the other planets are the other legs, which will have the DNA of that planet through mathematics. Because the one that's connected to 9 connects to Jupiter, and where it got that from, Jupiter takes
12 months.
12 years to circle the Earth, and if you square that, you get 144. And 144 is in that branch of 9. So that connects Jupiter to that one. So then you take another planet, it might take 3 years. You square that, and then you see which one it fits there. It's just interesting.
It's too much.
That's too much. Back to binary. Base number 14 decimal is also the same as Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. So we got the deep gorge there, we get the bramble and the thorn. What does the bramble and the thorn represent?
Bramble bush.
The Moses experience.
Moses, yes.
There's also the crown.
Yeah, the crown of thorns. But prior to the Messiah, we had the Moses burning bush experience. We had Mount Sinai. We had the giving of the Torah. We had all those things happening.
The ram caught in
Ram court. We had Isaac. The whole message of Mashiach is found on the left side of this deep valley. So anyone that's on the left side of the deep valley still need to engage with Mashiach's work in order to pass through and then be part of what's on the other side.
It's now after the wine press.
So this is basically after the 7th millennium, yeah. So on the right side of this gorge, hold a pilgrim festival, hand, gift, offering. It's actually a pot, not a bot. Jar. Celebrate, dance, spoil booty, lifting up the expression aha, gold, love, beloved King and David. So what you see on the right-hand side is the marriage feast with the beloved king, and he's lifting up his spoil, which is his bride, which is pure gold, being refined by his fire. And there's dancing, celebration. Also have the jar, the broken vessel, and we have the pilgrim festival, of which Passover as well as Sukkot are pilgrim festivals. So that symbolizes this experience entering into Yahweh's presence. That was just a side note, something interesting I saw. This is also from that previous slide, just to give an expression of Yahweh's presence. And what I want to put the emphasis on is the word or, Aleph Vav Resh. And I call that the original light, or the light that radiates from the fire that is the essence of Yahweh. He radiates the fire from his essence, and he's consuming fire. So it's not a light switch, there's no electricity, he is it. He's the ultimate energy that energizes everything. And his presence is powerful and dangerous. Very bright, very hot. So you need to be in a crystal state in order to exist in his presence. All right, so let's change gears. I'm going to focus now on the letter Samech. Now, Samech, you spell Samek, Mem, Kaf. And this Kaf is called the Kaf Sufit. It's got a long tail. Now, Kaf Sufit normally represents a collective hand. Kaf means hand as well. And the collective hand is on the left. The reason I put it in the Menorah pattern is to see where's left and right and where's center. Because as we learned, the middle is the most important one. It's all about that. On the right, something that comes from the spiritual. On the left is the application of it in this physical through the means of something. So we see now a collective hand. So something's going to happen through a collective hand in the physical that comes from the spiritual in the form of a samech. And in the middle, we have the letter mem. So what does mem represent? The word. The washing water of the word. Now, if you just think about the essence of water, what does water do? What's the attributes of water? It clean.
Wet, quench your thirst.
We also saw that the essence of Yahweh's spirit is water. It quenches thirst, but the spirit also cleanses.
But it's also a unique material, isn't it? It's like there's nothing quite. It's a bit, well, you've got fire as well, but it's
the same as fire. You can't really explain it.
You can't really,
You can see through it, so it doesn't really exist.
You can't hold it. You
can exist in three states: liquid, solid, and gas.
Yeah. It can hold any shape that you pour it into.
You need a container.
You need a container, yes.
You can't live without it.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you waste it, it will disappear. And you can pollute it. You can pollute it.
That's true.
Yeah.
It only needs a drop, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if you think of the mem, you can pollute Yahweh's word. You can also pollute Yahweh's spirit. They call it the Holy Spirit. It make you bark. That's a polluted spirit. It's not Yahweh's spirit.
Chicken or laugh
Yeah.
a crazy person or something.
So that's the essence that Yahweh used. Now the samech is a means to connect something in the spiritual to something that's physical. Now the hint I'm going to give you is the last one there. The kaf is a collective hand on the left side through whom Yahweh reaches into the physical. Now that collective hand is his body. So you want to work through his body. And as you can see, the kaf is on the left, but I also wrote it from the top down, so it's at the bottom. We had the idea of the kingdom of the north, kingdom of the south, so the collective hand can reach down into the lowest parts. You can go to the bars, to the corners of the street and preach the gospel in the darkness, and people will come to light. So that's the work of the collective hand. They need to be equipped with the mem, the word, in order to do that. But then we have this idea of the samech. So what does samech mean? Samech means to prop, to lean upon, to take hold of, to bear up, to support, to establish, stand fast, and to sustain. Now, our Jewish brothers believe that the samech is an endless and ever ascending spiral of Yahweh's glory in the universe. So it's something that rotates. If you think about the concept of a tornado, something that spins, and because it spins, it can perform work. It's got power, it can destroy, but it also have a place of rest right in the middle. And that's the nature of Yahweh's glory, intermingled with his Ruach, his spirit, which is attribute of his glory manifested in the physical. It's a powerful force where you can find rest within, and it can do work. What work does it have? It elevates. You can pick up a car and chuck it over there. That's how strong it is. So this spinning force of the samech, the reason it's a spinning force, because that's one of the two letters that are a circle. If you look at it, and if you look at tornado from the top, it's a samech, it's a circle. The other one that looks like a circle is the letter mem, but mem sufit, the one on the end, which is on the end of the word mayim. And they both look the same. The mem is just a bit more square. Don't build a car with square wheels. Don't use the mem, rather use the samech. So that's the idea of the spinning forces. Now, if you think about the spinning forces as the energy, which is the samech, which is the glory of Yahweh, and the medium that actually is rotating is the cloud or the water or the debris that's spinning around that can do work. So imagine if you're very dirty and there's a water tornado that hits you, it will wash you clean instantly. Because the water that it contains, that's spinning around, can do work with the energy it gets from the samech. And that will give that cleaning force. And we also learned that the Torah is a cycle, the festivals are cycles, everything is a cycle. We get the idea of the mem spinning, and the idea of the roundness of the wheel of the mem now makes sense in the concept of a cycle. What gives the word energy? The letter is dead. If you add the spirit to the word, it's powerful and it's spinning. It can clean, it can lift things up, it can elevate you. And the power that's set behind it, that's the spirit, is the samech, the glory and the energy that come from up high, that's spinning into this realm. And it takes the medium of the word and it does work through the collective hand. So that's the picture, the word picture of the word samech. It's a lot in it. It's one letter that you write out into Hebrew letters that now is a picture of a water tornado. That's very powerful, isn't it? I've got respect for the samech now. I've also have the picture here of the cycles. The idea of a cycle is number 7. 7 translates things into 8. But we also learned that number 8 is number 1 because we have a 7 cycle creation. So when you get to number 8, it's day 1 of week 2. Number 8 is always number 1. It repeats the cycle in a foundational manner. You finish this one, it's a stepping stone. You step on the same one, but it's effectively the same cycle, but you changed. You now step up. And that's that elevation aspect of the tornado. As you step through the Torah cycle, the elevation of the word is the force that uplifts you. And it changes you as you go through it. So you will be changed if you dare to interact with Yahweh's tornado of his word that's got the energy of his spirit in it. It's powerful. You will be changed. You will be elevated. Beautiful picture. Why do I talk about this? Because Sukkot and Pesach both have the letter Samech in them. One is the last feast, the other one is the first one. If you connect the two festivals, you get a wheel. The feast cycle is also a letter Samech. It's got the same attributes. It's like a holographic pattern. The small letter Samech has got the larger, which is the feast cycle. But the feast cycle is also a Samech, which is the small one. And everything is within everything in itself. And it contains itself. And that's an aspect that we need to understand if we want to think about spiritual things. If you want to see something three-dimensional, touch and feel it and all that, you're not going to get it. We need to take away the box. Don't even think outside the box. You need to remove the box completely in order to understand the spiritual things of Yahweh. And that's where this comes into. So everything in Hebrew in the word is extremely important. It's like taking a chemical reaction or chemical substance, that things that you connect together, or you make whatever gas or chemical something. You take one thing out, it will no longer be what it's supposed to be. So if you tamper with Yahweh's word, you take something out, it will break the whole thing completely. It might look similar, but it won't be the same. In the same way, when we look at Yahweh's word, we don't dare take anything away. We don't dare adding anything. We just look at it for what it is, and we try to understand it and use the tools that He's giving us. So the importance of the letter Samech within something is extremely important if you have the backstory now of the energy involved within the Samech, the power it's got, and the ability to do that work that connects you to the spiritual through a collective hand. This also gives us the hint that you cannot do it on your own. The Samech won't work in you, it works in a body. You can try on your own, it won't work. You will have Samech Mem. Congratulations. Where's your cuff? You won't be effective. You might have a YouTube channel or televangelist thing, but you won't have any power because you're missing that last bit. All right, so in the letter Samech, am I going backwards? This is where I want to be, the other tornado. As you can see, the old book type, top right, is a perfect circle. Then we have the Samech that we know in Hebrew, and then we get the pictograph. It's a very interesting, looks like an antenna. Now, why is the antenna important? It connects to energy that you can't see. Because the glory of Yahweh is spinning. Have you ever asked the question, how fast does it spin? What frequency does it spin? Does it spin at different frequencies? If you think about speech, sound, it's frequencies. And it's frequency upon frequency packaged up, compartmented, and placed in certain order in order to send a message to someone who can receive and understand it. So now we're learning the language of Hebrew, which is not the Hebrew language, but the language that sits beyond Hebrew. And that's a little antenna that you now have to understand things that is not written down, that you can glean from the Hebrew letters themselves.
It's the white space.
It's the white space between the letters. That's much more information than just the two letters that's sitting either side of the white space. As we look at the three letters, we got a whole story from it. It's all white space. Nothing is written down. But the symbolism, tell 1,000 pictures. It's like a picture with 1,000 words. Now, within this these words, Pesach and Sukkot, we have the Samech. So we have the Samech in the middle of Pesach, and we have the Samech on the end, which is Sukkot. So this Samech seems to be, you can get better access to this one. That one you have to go through the Vav, through the Kaf, through another Vav, and then get that one. So it's harder to get to the Samech during Sukkot. It's easier to get to the Samech through Pesach. Why is that? Because Sukkot is the last festival. You have to go through all the other festivals before you get to it. And the Pesach one, the key is the letter Chet. You can only truly access the Samech in Pesach if you walk through the last gate. You need to access the Pesach in the 8th millennium, not the one in the 6th millennium, or the ones in the 6th millennium. They are only shadows. The real one only exists in the 8th millennium. That's called the wedding. That's where you will access the true Samech, the core of Samech, or the essence of the glory of Yahweh, which is His presence. You can only access that through the letter Chet, which is the last gate of the tabernacle, in a renewed body. So it's not as accessible as I said. So Pesach and Sukkot is similar in nature. If you think about trying to access the Sabbath, it's just as difficult. And there's a time factor that you have to go through, which is called this life and the prophetic cycle. If you're born 500 years back, you're not going to experience what we experience now. You have to live now to experience what we experience now. But through the resurrection, they now have access through the same time frame to walk through that last Chet. So time is not a factor when you step into the 8th millennium. And that's what the resurrection is all about.
You start with a great day if you want, because that's sacrificing the lamb. And then you've got 7 days of unleavened bread. Sukkot, you start with your harvest festival and you end with great day.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Pesach is it's the first feast. If you look at the 7-day creation, it's the first day. What was created on the first day? What did Yahweh say on day 1? Let there be light. When we look at Pesach, what do we see when we enter through the Chet? We see is light. We see the city. Let there be light. So we see the final in the first. That's holographic in a sense as well. So when we experience Pesach now, in the back of our minds, it's like stepping into the city, sitting at the marriage feast. We just walk through that Chet in a renewed body. We are now enjoying the marriage feast. And that's what we need to celebrate every year around Pesach. And that is something to rejoice about. Yes, we can look back. Oh, we suffered under the Egyptians. We've done this and that. Yes, it's good to know that. But we need to look forward as well. We don't only look back. So we have the letter Chet. Now Sukkot, we have the letter Tav. And that's the other doorway that we saw in the tabernacle. The one that's missing is the letter Hey. But the letter Hey is also found in Sukkot. If you translate this Sukkot to the word Sukkah, build a Sukkah, there's your letter Hey in the Sukkah. So Passover and Sukkot, the beginning and the end, the Aleph and the Tav of the festivals, contain the 3 gateways. And everything in between the two is just as important. It's not just you need the first, you need the last. You need to experience from the beginning right through to the end. Just like salvation is not just this one. It's the whole experience until that one. So you need to step into Passover and experience all the festivals, including the last one, in order to have the full essence of every doorway that you can walk through. All right, so that's all I want to say about this. Oh, there's more. This one has got a different angle to it. It's still the Samech. You can see the spinning forces there. You got the letter Mem. But I changed the letter Mem's color slightly because this is about creation, creating something new. And the starting point of this is Psalm 145:14, where it says, Yahweh upholds all who fall and lifts up all who bow down. And that word upholds is the word Samech. That's where this word comes into. And this is the idea of lifting up and the idea of helping up, an idea of supporting. Now, if you think about this in context of what the picture is, what people have of Yahweh, or he's angry, he just wants to smite us and judge us and chuck us in a pool of fire. When you look at this, you want to uphold those. those who fall and lift those up who are bowed down. And that bow down is not a worshipping. It's people who are run down, who are tired, who had enough. He wants to support them. He wants to lift them up. That's the nature of Yahweh. And that's the purpose of the power that exists within the Samech. Now the Samech is also a circle. When you look from the top, you can also see the snake on the pole.
I thought so
When the snake spiral, top view, it's Samech. Now if you look at the top view, they say that the snake on the pole is for the healing, so you won't die. It's connected to life and salvation. The occult use that same concept of the snake on the pole. Top view as well, that's the snake with the tail in the mouth. They create the letter Samech with a snake. Now if you connect that image snake, or snake of the image of the snake, it's of course the Nachash. And the snake on the pole is the death to the Nachash, which is done by Mashiach. If you look at the gematria of Mashiach and Nachash, they share the same number, which is 358. So the one is the shadow of the other. They are the two opposing forces. The one comes from the spiritual, which is the Samech. The other one is a shadow of the Samech. It looks like a Samech, but it's not. It's got the same forces. It's got a spiritual spin to it. It's got words. It's got a collective hand. But it's the wrong one. And that's why people are deceived, and they call it the anti-Messiah, which is the one who is against, or the opposer, or the one that's the shadow image of, that look like the real, but it's not. And that's what deception is. And that's where the Nachash comes in. Now, in order to counter this, Yahweh used the Mem as a symbol of the Samech, which is Yeshua as the word. The Nachash can never be the word. He can never be the Mem Sufit, because he cannot speak the words of Yahweh that are creative words. He can only pervert already spoken words. And that's spinning it, giving it a different spin, so to speak.
Spinning it in the different
Spin it in a lie, you know. So Yahweh is using the problem as the solution, and he's reversing the effect of the serpent back into the elevated state through the work of Mashiach. Now, who gave the Nachash its power? It's Adam. Well, let's call him Adam. Collective Adam and Chava. If they hadn't listened to him, they would have still been in an elevated state, above the world of duality, not being bothered by the opposer. But because he had access to them, and they listened to him, they actually opened up the doorway, and then the imperfections came into the garden, and then Yahweh removed it and protected it with fire. Whenever you access or go walk through that gateway, it will be through fire. So there will be purification. So that's another Samech picture. Stepping from the Samech into the letter Ayin. Now the reason I am going to look at the letter Ayin is through the cycles of 770, 700, 7,000. It's all about the translation or the cleansing power of the rotating forces of the Samech, but in the form of cycles, which connects to the number 7. Now 70 is the number of Ayin. So what does Ayin have to do with cycles? What does it have to do with the spinning rotation forces of Yahweh's glory? Is there a link? Now the link is found within the meaning of Ayin, that means eye and fountain, and it represents a fountain of light. So the medium is not water, the medium is light. Now if there's a fountain of light, can you name a practical fountain of light that exists in the physical?
The sun.
No, that's a source.
Your
Now your eyes is one of it, because ayin is eye. Yes, your eyes is the key. That's a fountain of light, yes. From the brain's perspective, the light floods into the brain through the fountain of the eye. It's a source of light into your mind through the lens of the eye. I just said it. A lens is a fountain of light that you find on a camera that allows the medium of light to go through it from one medium to another, and it only allows the medium of light through it.
So Yah's word would be another form of a
Lens,
fountain.
a lens.
Yeah, his word is the medium of light. That's why it goes through the fountain of light. The other source we found in day one, when Yahweh say, "Let there be light," that light comes from the consuming fire, who is He, the Aleph, which is the word Or, Aleph Vav Resh. You can see the Aleph is the source of that light. Now this light is so powerful, if you shine that light into the physical, it will consume everything. Because this is a world of duality. It will at least destroy everything that's got a little bit of darkness in it, which is a lot. So Yahweh had to put some sort of a filter in order to slow down or to take away some of the intensity, but still have the essence of it. And that's where the lens of the ayin comes in. So on the other side of the ayin is the aleph, the consuming fire. And through the ayin it shines a lower light that is what we know as the sun, moon, and stars. Physicists say that the photon is the basic building block of all matter. It's the smallest particle. So everything that is physical, including you and me, consists of light that's been radiated through an ayin that originates from Yahweh. And just like speech, that's got packaged up sound in a certain sequence with information, light has got the DNA packaged up, shining and creating you. You are radiating light frequency whose source is Yahweh. And you manifest in the physical through a lens of an ayin of some sort. If you want to go technical. And it translates you in the spiritual into you in the physical. And you in the spiritual is perfect. You in the physical is not. And that's your new man, old man connection that Paul is making. And we are defiled and we need to be corrected. Your DNA need to be repaired. And he used the medium of light to fix a problem because of the defiled light. And we are going to be translated back into the medium of light again, which is the beryl crystal idea. Still the medium of light. It's an interesting concept to think about. So now we have an ayin, source is Yahweh, radiating the glory and the power spinning into our world, making everything exist. And when Yahweh spoke, he formed that energy into things. And that's how he created. It's through a lens that radiates him, slow him down in intensity to manifest us. But our source is him. He is the true light behind the lens that generates everything that exists that we see and touch. That's why we are in him. And all you need to do is to switch off the lens and there will be total darkness. And then the next creation cycle starts. Then you open up the lens and he calls that, let there be light, day one. And then he starts shining again. And then he uses whatever's on the table in the ingredients, he shines his light on it. It starts to shape great form by the energy spinning and the things restructuring, in coming into harmony with his energy and his DNA, if you like, that's radiating upon us. So that's the basic spiritual science behind creation, if you like. The source is Yahweh, the medium is light, and the light is now being sent through
packaged up like a DNA strand in the form of words that he spoke. So when Yahweh spoke, he didn't speak sound, he spoke light. He spoke in the medium of light containing the same information as if I speak sound. He spoke in a high dimension. If you speed up sound, it will flicker as light. People pinpoint a telescope at stars, the light, slow it down, and then they listen to the sound. It's just slowed down light. It's just translating it to a lower medium. And we are translating a lower medium as well. But they still resonate. Did I lose anyone?
Yes.
Even when Moshe was on the mountain, he was, and the children of Israel, Moshe was covered with a cloud because the light was just.
Yeah, it was diffused, the light. Yeah, and when he came down, his face was shining. Why? Because he was exposed to a higher form of light which radiates from Yahweh himself. And he was basically starting to create a renewed body from the top down. His head was already being partially transformed, maybe. Anyway, I've got the message, I need to move on.
Also, when you consider at the tent of meeting, it says when the cloud came down, Yahweh spoke, Moshe.
Yeah.
He couldn't have just said to him, hey Mo, this is what's going on, otherwise everybody would be gone.
Yeah.
He had to come down in the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, to bring it down in a lower intensity, so to speak. Right, this one we're going to look at Saturday as well. I just want to lay a few things. I already mentioned some of it. Is that when Yahweh created, there was a foundation of creation that existed before he spoke. Now in practice, when you think about it, when he separated the waters from the waters, he separated the waters from the land. Then he took the ground and he formed man. So where was Adam prior to being formed? Huh? No, he was in the ground, in the earth. Yahweh's spirit is energy, as we learned, that quickened him. He was entrapped in the earth. And the reason I'm saying that is because of the idea of the earth that's covered by the waters of the deep, or the earth is in bondage under darkness. And the earth had the essence of Adam entrapped in it, which is the result of the previous judgment and the separation that was left. Now they are still in bondage under darkness, under the waters of the deep, which is in the lower realm, in the kingdom of darkness, in the kingdom of the south, under the power and authority of Nachash, in the world of duality, where he's an opposing force. And Yahweh now need to release Adam that's trapped in the ground, under the waters of the deep, and revive him. So I had to say, hey Adam, where are you? We're going to separate this first. Oh, we look for you. Oh, there you are. Let me find you. And then he formed him. And then he breathed his energy, which is the essence of his spirit, which is the same as the shin moving over the water. That same shin, that energy, that power, that samech, revived him, and he came alive. He was released from that lower state into a higher state. And Yahweh placed him in the garden, which is the elevated state. And the reason I say that the souls are entrapped under the waters of the deep, because that's found in the word of the deep, or darkness, which is the word choshek. You see the letter chet, shin, and kaf sufit. What did we say about kaf sufit? It's a collective hand. A hand is the hand of who? People. Collective hand means it's a body of some sort. Maybe it was a body of Messiah, It was foolish, still entrapped in the darkness. And then the Shin came, which is the energy to release them, and they have life. They are souls entrapped, and they need to be fished out. That's why the symbolism of the disciples, they are fishers of men. And we're going to look Saturday on a gematria where I found the mouth and the hook, where Yahweh is fishing them out of this water, looking at the gematria of Hoshek. We see the symbolism of the disciples, fishers of men, found within the gematria of this word, to confirm that they are trapped souls in the ground, trapped under the waters of the deep, after a judgment event. And this is a picture of the lake of fire. It's a lake with fire on top of it, which we read in Bereshit, we call it creation.
A lake, the deep, with fire on top of it, the spirit of Yah hovering over the top of it.
And on this side you have the city in Yahweh's presence. That's why I said their smoke will go up in the presence of the Lamb and his angels, his holy angels. Because he's in the city, it's a deep, what do you call it, gorge. I might bring in, from my studies I'm doing, I'm analyzing, the Jews have 7 words for earth. And they think there are 7 earths or 7 realms or 7 parts to earth or whatever. And I think it was the 2nd or 3rd one that I analyzed. It actually means it's a place submerged underwater, and there are people in there, and you can see the pillars of the earth within that lower medium. I think I'll put that in Saturdays. I've already got that from my other studies, which makes sense if you think about the deep gorge, the waters of the deep, and the elevated mountain with the city, which is the presence of the Lamb and the angels. And then on the other side, you get those who are separated and trapped. And as they get purified, the smoke goes up. It's part of the work of the goldsmith, doing his thing. It's an interesting thing to think about creation that way. It had a starting point. It's part of a cycle. We get all the ingredients that's on the table before we start his creation process. We find it under the waters of the deep. And then he adds his energy, which is his spirit. Then he spoke. And then he separated to find it. And then we bring it back up and release it. Clean it up, purify it, put it in the garden.
Very deep.
It makes me think that if man then was from the previous cycle and then ends up in the deep, in under the earth, then what happened with the woman in the previous cycle that she ended up in the rim?
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah.
So how did they must have become one in the last cycle too.
Yeah.
And then he separates again, and I don't know.
And think of your own life. Where were you? Let's call it your BC days, which is your previous cycle. You were now elevated to a new cycle. I was a godless sinner. I came to faith. I was a normal Christian, which is the next cycle. And I was elevated. Now I follow Torah, which is another cycle. So I have 3 cycles within this life.
Yeah.
If you think about that way. And Yahweh used the one as a foundation for the other, and they always repeat, because it's about purifying you, uplifting you, upholding you, making you perfect.
Even the New Agers understand the concept of the cycles, but it's not a cycle, it's a spiral.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only a cycle, but it's a spiral that you're always ever elevated. It might seem like you're back at the same place, but you're actually back at a different level.
Yeah, it's like us with the Torah cycle. This Torah cycle, we're better off than the previous one because of what we learned. You're at the same place within the Torah time frame. In the physical time frame, you're a bit older, but you are changed because of the cycle, and you are definitely an elevated spiritual
No,
plane.
that's got nothing to do with people that believe in reincarnation.
No.
No. Those that are down in the deep, in the dark, come back again.
It's not about the word reincarnation is it's got a stigma to it. If you think about cycles and purification, people who are in a fallen state will stay in a fallen state until they come out of a fallen state into a renewed state. Are they reincarnated into a new state? No, it's called resurrection in the right language. And renewed body, that's the right language. Is that reincarnation? Depends on what you look at it, what you call it. But the language, it's got a different connotation to it, so I don't want to use that language. Is it a similar principle? Yes. If you only keep it in the medium of humans, not animals and all that rubbish, you are definitely a renewed person as you get elevated. Yeah. In this life, in these cycles, and the next life, and those cycles. And that's why we will never get bored. Because Yahweh will be ever changing us. And we'll become more like Him. Now, this is the last slide. I just want to use this as a foundation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We can go through it on Saturday again. I just want to mention the importance of the Aleph Bet cycle. I'm going to use one example to explain to you why I think it's important, and you'll probably see it or you don't, because it might be too complex. As I said, Samech is 15. It's the 15th letter of the Aleph Bet. It looks like a circle. Other things that look like circles that we know of that has to do with time, because number 15 is also a calendar date, is a moon. So the Samech depicts the full moon. And the full moon is on the 15th of Nisan and the 15th of Tishri. And we call it the first day of unleavened bread, and we call it the first day of Sukkot. So you see the significance of the Samech, how it connects to festivals in the context of a calendar that's embedded in the Aleph Bet. Coincidental, number 15. Isn't that interesting? And that automatically drew my attention when I saw that. And I said, okay, so what if I keep on counting? And then I get to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then I get 22. So then 23 is basically the Aleph, because I have to start over again. And when I get to 30, which is a biblical month, I get to number 8, which is Chet. So if I complete 1 month cycle, I will end up at the third doorway, which enter into life. So there's another coincidence. Just looking at the Aleph Bet. Now, if the Samech is a full moon, then the Aleph is a new moon, because you go back 15 days. The Aleph is a new moon, because you always say, let there be light. What light? When we look at trumpets, the sliver. You have to see new light. So it still holds true, looking at the calendar, looking at the Aleph Bet and the meaning. And when the new moon, or the Aleph, is the beginning, then the Tav is the end. And that symbolizes a dark moon, which you get before a new moon, if you continue the cycle. Now, when I did the Aleph Bet, I read, or I study a letter, then I look at the letter prior to it. In relationship to that letter, I look at the one that's coming. In relation to that, I look at all three. I read it from left to right, right to left, analyze it upside down. And you can't believe the information that's embedded in the Aleph Bet if you just analyze it as Hebrew text. The only thing is, this is not a word. It's just a letter sequence with 22 letters. But it's got meaning, and it tells a story. For example, if you try, we access the Chet from the right side. You have to go through one cycle in order to get to the Chet. So you have to go through, and then you end up with a Chet, which is 30. What if you want to access Chet from the other way? You want to get the back door. What do you find there? Letter Tet. What's that? It's a serpent. There's a serpent at the door. That's a message to Cain. And what does the serpent do? He's actually guarding the doorway, so you can't get in. And the tet, number 9, when I did the study, represents the world of duality.
Because it's
You can't break
way this way and that way,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, you can't break into the doorway of Chet. You have to go through a Tet, which symbolizes the world of duality, that symbolizes this life. You have to live this life before you can enter into the letter Chet. You have to live and die before you can enter. That's it. And that's the symbolism of the letter Tet. That's just a few interesting things. So we are going to look at these things as we go. So I'll have a little snippet as part of every Torah portion. So the first 22, we'll do 22 letters. And it will probably harmonize with the Torah portion itself anyway, as we go through it, because they do have meaning. But it's very interesting. So that's where I will finish this study. Any comments or questions? I know it's a bit much, but it's Bereshit. It's my favorite Torah portion. That's the one that I enjoy the most, I think.
You didn't even share this with me.
No. It is just laying the foundation for what we want to do from Saturday onwards. Yeah. But there's a lot in it. But it gives us just a different context. But I do want to just ground it with what's in the text itself. Otherwise, you can't connect it, and it doesn't mean anything anyway. Yeah. All right. Any comments or questions? All right. You want to close in prayer?
Father, we just thank you this morning again that we've had this privilege of listening to this word. We praise you, Lord, that our minds will receive that which we've been taught. Lord, that vision will be opened, the veil lifted, that we will be able to see clearly what you have taught us this day. Father, thank you for the words which have come to us, helping us to understand better the things which you have taught us. We praise you for the Torah, we praise you for what you've given us. We praise you for the study. Lord, we praise you for the day. And we thank you that you have always come through for us. Not one word will fall to the ground. It will all be fruitful as you've given us this word to endure and to take and to apply to our lives. I pray in the senior Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.